All right, it's a couple days later. I was just reading the little paragraph on the box here, and it does say that you may find additional parts that you do not need for your application, which, you know, blah, blah, blah. It just means that, you know, they have to have less inventory and less separate model numbers. So some of this stuff may not be used, which I guess I kind of figured anyway. I was kind of already going down that road, but you know, sometimes you just like to see that. So I think I've got all the parts replaced that need to be replaced. Really isn't a whole lot. I mean, I guess it's mostly gaskets because they were leaking. You got the accelerator pump and the main jet pickup. A bunch of O-rings, although not all of them. And, you know, make sure everything is moving nice and freely and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm going to go ahead and try to start putting it back together. Then it looks like we're going to be getting into float settings, float drop, stuff like that. What is the logical way of putting it back together, you ask? I don't know. And you get the new idle mixture screw, comes with it also. That's where it sits on the engine. And this goes on top of that, but we need a gasket for that, which looks like this. And then we got some pretty big screws. Well, that would have to be it. There's an extra hole there, which I guess was on the old one too. Designed to work for multiple applications. I think this is where the tag was. Got one on the bottom side. Probably should have put this in before I tightened the other two, but I forgot. Forgot there was a third one. But it went in just fine. I do have one new one of these. I guess I'll put it here because it's probably the most visible. I don't know. Not that it makes any difference at all. It goes over the shaft and it snaps like that. All right, so at this point, I guess we're getting into float adjustment. With bowl cover held upside down and level, measure from upper edge of float seam to the projection on bowl cover casting rib as shown in A. No idea what that's showing. All right, with bowl cover, which is this. No, this would be the cover. Bowl cover, yeah, because that's what it looks like in the picture. Held like that. And level, measure from upper edge of float seam, which I guess would be, that's the seam, to the projection on bowl cover casting. And it does come with this little handy dandy float gauge. It kind of seems to me like it's good because it's sitting perfectly level, but I'm going to try to figure out what the hell this is saying and then I'll show you. All right, so what I can tell is you measure, I've got the gasket on there, but it really doesn't matter because we're just looking for the difference. So right there, it's right on the 20 line at that bottom edge, or I guess really the upper edge of the float when it's in the right configuration. So that would be 5/8 of an inch these are, the markings are in 30 seconds of an inch. So that would be 20-30 seconds. And so when you flip it over, it should drop a 1/2 of an inch. The flow should drop 1/2 of an inch plus or minus a 1/16 of an inch. So it can be a little bit off. It doesn't have to be exact. When the bowl cover is held upright. Adjust by bending the limiting arms on float lever, which I guess are these. Yeah. Because they would, if you bend that over more, it'll hit this and cause it to not come down as much. So that's how I understand that to be, and that kind of makes sense. So I just wanted to make sure the needle and seat were actually working because it looks so different from the old one. I just want to make sure I was actually using what was a needle, and well, the seat I knew was right. But it does seem like it's working. So I just hooked up my makeshift fuel/brake line here. And right now the flow is down, so I should be able to blow through this. Don't try this at home. Don't blow on dirty ass hoses. But you can hear it, my air is going through. If I put the float up, I can't blow through. So it's working. Just want to make sure. That being said, what I read, what I understand, is that they're saying that when I have it flipped over the right side up like this, that line should only drop by a 1/2 of an inch. And this is way more than that, because when it was up here, we were at, it was right on the 20 line. When it drops, it's basically, it should be at the 4 line, which would be a 1/2 of an inch lower than it was before. Now, I don't know if maybe I should be doing it in the middle or where, but I guess there it does look to be about right. If I go by the middle, it is pretty close, and it's within like a 1/16 of an inch. So I don't think I'm going to mess with it. Again, I don't know a lot about carburetors. I'm learning over the last few years, you know, doing lawnmowers and now a couple of vehicles. But I don't know why it would matter so much, as long as, to me, this is the most important. So when it comes up, and you know, that's nice, and you can feel the resistance against that rubber seat, or rubber needle, I guess, when it's right in that level position. If I push up, you can feel a little bit of like a springiness to it. And we can see that it's working. So to me, it's more making sure that you have a level of fuel inside of the bowl, but it doesn't overflow. So I think, again, this is a running vehicle. I don't think I should have to screw with that. So I'm not going to. So there. All right, so I think at this point, I'm gonna just finish putting it together. I think the rest of the adjustments are done with it together, from what I gather. The 2 springs go in the 2 holes. The bigger one should go in the bigger hole. The little one goes in the little hole. And I have the gasket already slipped on here. And the little, this is called a vacuum pump. So this is the metering rod, and this one is controlled through some sort of vacuum with this plunger right here down in this this hole. I wonder if I should have put this on first. I think I should have. Yeah, it looks like that should go in here before you put this on. So let me just take this back off real quick. It's only 3 screws. All right, let's just move it out of the way. I already got that rod on there. So we'll move it out of the way and attempt to slip this down. Just let everything fall into place. Except it doesn't want to. There it goes. There's a little bit of a tension to push back up, but I guess that's because there are springs that we just put in there. All right, so that's going to go in there, but we can do that after it's tightened. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but there are a bunch of these on eBay that are in like a rebuildable core state, kind of like this one, but probably some of them are in better shape than this one is. And you could probably buy it for about as much as you pay for the rebuild kit. So this one just doesn't work, which I don't think it's going to be a problem. It doesn't seem like it's that bad. I mean, it's a little rusty, but and I could probably clean it up better. I have not actually soaked this. Well, I did soak it in like simple green solution, but that was about it. This is more just the process of taking it apart and putting it back together. All right, and then this, you see there's a little bit of a spring, but it seems to be expected. There's the one kind of weird looking shorter screw that goes down here in the middle. And that goes right on top of a jet of some sort, now that I'm looking in there. I'm going to put the outside ones in first. And guys, I would really appreciate if you do find this video helpful. Like, I understand I'm not a professional at this, but it didn't seem like there was very much content on this particular carburetor. If you do find it helpful, I really would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Because I know if you're just kind of watching the videos, it doesn't really matter to you, but it doesn't cost you anything, and it does actually really help a lot with YouTube algorithms, and more people will be able to see it if it is a helpful video, and it helps me out too, because I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So really appreciate it. Just go in there and click that button right now. Totally free. You don't even have to have notifications of the videos if you don't want, but like it, throw a comment down saying, hey, the video stinks, doesn't matter. Any comment, any like, really helps out. I'm just kind of going around and doing these in kind of a crisscross pattern to try to help seat it down evenly. Probably should have gotten this one started first though. Hopefully it won't matter too much. Watch this knock this whole thing on the floor. To have it sit perfectly level, it has to sit off the edge a little bit, because this throttle arm kind of sticks down just a little bit. It's kind of annoying, but whatever. There we go. All right. Definitely don't need to be too tight. Just, that motion right there, I'm not using my whole arm, I'm just using my wrists. They're tight. So that should be good enough. I'm not sure what happened over here. I'm scared to mess with that one anymore. But I think it's down and sealed good enough. So we were basically back together, but now we have to look at metering rod adjustment. Not really expecting this stuff to be out of adjustment, because this car supposedly ran fine when it was parked. So things like that I don't think should be messed up. I guess it would be, if you have somebody that's in there that's trying to get something to run that really doesn't know what they're doing at all, they just start screwing with stuff, and then you have to go back to square one. Let me figure out what I'm doing here with this pump adjustment, metering rod adjustment, and then once I figure it out, I'll show you. All right, so the next step they had on here was to measure and adjust the pump, what was it? The pump, so the accelerator pump. And what it says is when the throttle is completely closed, which it is right there, measure from the top edge of the pump link to the surface of bowl cover as shown in B. And what it's showing is the top of this would be what I would refer to as a link. So the top of that to the surface, and I'm getting, it's right on the 16. So it's basically right at a half of an inch. And then it says when the throttle valve is open wide, so we open all the way up, it should move a quarter of an inch, because there's a little chart that shows you some of the specs. So it says pump a quarter. It says when the throttle valve is open wide, the plunger should move down the distance shown in the table. Okay, so with it all the way down, I'm at the 12 line. So for me, it's moving about 1/8 of an inch. So that's wrong according to this table. I'm not going to change it because, again, this car ran. I will come back. If I still have trouble with it, something not working properly, I'll come back to it. But what it says to adjust it is you come over to this rod right here. It says adjust by bending the pump connecting rod at the lower angle. So to me that means that right down here, this angle right here would be your adjustment. So I would assume you would bend that to be more like this or more like this to adjust that. So that's how I understand it to be the way you do it, but I'm leaving it alone. All right, so the next adjustment is adjusting the metering rod, which is this little skinny rod right here. However, this kit, it says in the instructions that it should have come with a gauge for that. I do not have that. It says insert metering rod gauge supplied in the metering rod location so that the tapered end of gauge fits into the jet. So, you know, you would have this out and something would go down in there. I don't have anything that even remotely looks like that. So I can't do this. I really don't understand why this is not supplied. So if anyone from this company, Daytona Parts, is watching this, maybe they have an answer for me as far as why it's not here or if I'm just missing something. But so I'm just gonna leave that alone. But it basically says you press down on the link, which would be this thing from what I can see, until metering rod pin, which I guess would be what it slips over right there. So you would push this down until that tip touches this gauge, touches the end of gauge, and adjust by bending the lip as shown. I'm pretty sure that this here would be the adjustment. So you would just kind of bend this like that, whichever way you need it to go, as far as I can understand, if you had to adjust it. So that is the best I can explain that with what I have. So evidently this little flapper thing that's right here, that's called the anti-percolator adjustment. And I don't know how you would ever actually adjust this, but it, you know, it's on a pivot. It can move up and down. The other side of it kind of caps off over a hole. So what it says is crack the throttle open and insert a wire gauge between the throttle valve and the carburetor bore. Well, I just have regular feeler gauges like this, which won't work because it has to be a wire. because this is round. So you have to have something that's just going to fit in there like that. So I just matched up one of these carburetor cleaning wires as close as I could, and you close it down. So it's just a really small amount that it would be open. And then it's saying that the gap that's on the other side of this little lever here, so what's over here, that gap should be between 5 and 15 thousandths of an inch. And it says you adjust by bending the anti-percolator gap lever. So probably how this part right here sticks out over there to kind of be riding on this, or this hitting it, I imagine you would just bend that up or down to measure it. I don't know how anyone would ever be able to measure that gap, because for one thing, it looks like it's kind of like a cap, like it's like if you picture a bowl, you know, there's a bowl that's kind of going over top of the thing, whatever that little hole is. So even putting a gauge in there like that would kind of make it ride up off of that hole more. But I can't get a feeler gauge that I have in there. There's just not enough. Oh, maybe hold on a second here. Maybe if I do it in this way. Ah, look at that. Okay, never mind. So you can. But what I noticed is that it doesn't seem like it moves at all. Yeah, so when you open a throttle, the lever that would touch it comes off of it. So it's not doing anything. It comes all the way down and touches. So what I have here is a 10 thousandths feeler gauge. So if I get that under there, I'm just going to push it up. So push it up, slide the 10, which is right in the middle of the spec, under it. And right now we don't have it cracked open at all, I don't think, but let's try to get it in the same zip code first. Because right now there's a lot of space between this lever and this thing that's going to hit it, and that's all the way closed. So to me, I have no idea what an anti-percolator valve would even do. Just trying to bend it to where it touches it, at least. At least that's a little closer. At least now it moves it some. It's doing something where before it wasn't actually opening at all. I don't know if that's right or not, but as far as what I can understand, it kind of makes sense. So when you're open, when the throttle is open, it's going to be closed. But now when it comes all the way closed, it actually does open up a little bit. Before it wasn't doing anything. So I know that's wrong. So it probably is something that isn't that important, is my guess. But you know, so now if I put my wire gauge, which is probably, oh, well, that fell on the floor, so I don't know which one it is anymore. It kind of holds it too. Well, it did. All right, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave that well enough alone. I see that it's moving. It's a reasonable amount that it's opening. It's just coming off of the seat, and we'll just leave that alone. All right, so now we have fast idle adjustment. We have two different models in here. So that's under step B is the WE, which is what we have. Figure 7. Looks like we have to remove the choke to do that. The fast idle adjustment is the cold idle, basically, as far as the way I understand it. At least on my Mazda, the way that it works on that is you just tap the accelerator pedal, and it closes your choke. It also sets it to be at that fast idle, and then you just tap the throttle pedal and it lowers it down to the next step down on the idle. So you can almost immediately have it come down off of that fast idle, at least on that truck. Yeah, it looks like I've got to take this off too, so I guess I should have waited to put this on, but it's okay. All right, yeah, first step, remove coil housing, gasket, and baffle plate. Did that. Open throttle valve and hold the choke closed. So choke is closed, open throttle valve. Open throttle valve, I guess it means hold choke closed, but it pushes it open a little bit. Then close the throttle. This will allow the fast idle cam to move to fast idle position. Yes, there you go. With choke valve closed and slight finger pressure on throttle lever, clearance between throttle valve and bore should be as listed in the table. Okay, so it'd be the unloader table section, because it says figure 7, it's 3/16 of an inch. Slight finger pressure on throttle valve. Stuff doesn't necessarily move that freely, so I don't know what that really means, slight finger pressure, because it may not really be. I guess we're going to go with that, a little bit of movement. Choke is held closed, slight finger pressure on throttle lever. Clearance between throttle valve and bore should be so that would be throttle valve and bore is going to be down here, 3/16 of an inch. That's huge. All right, so it's not right. How do you adjust it? To adjust, shorten or lengthen choke connector rod, which would be this. Okay, it says if it's a screw type, you'd adjust the length of it, but that otherwise you would bend it right here. So, okay. I'm not going to bend it. We're going to assume that it's right. But it seems to me that if the choke is all the way shut, that this here should be pushing this to where the throttle plate is 3/16 of an inch open. So what it's saying is you would bend this to where it'd be pushing this open 3/16 of an inch. I don't really understand. I mean, I understand it, but like it's not doing that. Like it's not pushing it down at all. So it just seems like it would have to move quite a bit. So if that's down, that's pushing it open. So that's all the way down. How much does it open? Looks like about 3/16 of an inch. This gauge here, that far edge would be 3/16, which is exactly what that is. Okay. So with this pushed all the way down, but the choke in that situation is not closed. The choke closed, it brings it up like that. Which opens it a little bit less than that, but it is still opening. So that's saying that we would need to bend this rod down to do that. So I guess I don't know why I'm actually choosing to do this adjustment where I haven't done the other ones, but it probably would still start and run if it wasn't quite, especially because we're going to be kind of warm. Ambient temperature wise, I'm going to try to start this again more than likely. Okay. It's a little bit more open. I'm going to leave that be well enough alone. Who knows if this thing is going to work. Oh, now we go to the unloader adjustment. I don't know. This is so confusing. It says, it's referring to figure 7, which is here. But then over here you have figure 7 and figure 8. So I figured that was the measurement for that, the 3/16 of an inch. Mono WE, open throttle valve wide and closed choke as far as possible without forcing it. The distance between the lower edge of choke valve, air horn wall should be as listed in the table. Very confusing because, yeah, so I don't know what this up here was supposed to be. Let me bend this back to kind of how it was. It was a little bit bent up like that. So now it says open throttle valve wide and close choke as far as you can. Yeah, so it won't close all the way. And it should be that 3/16 of an inch, which it is not. It's about half of that. Maybe those two numbers, maybe they both should be 3/16 of an inch. And to adjust it, you bend at lever H, which would be this right here. So you would bend that up or down. So to open it more, you bend it downward. That's hard to, I guess I could squeeze it. Yeah, a little bit. That seems to be about right. Spin that a little bit. And then the last thing is the idle adjustment, which it says adjust stop screw 1, which figure 9, let's see. Yeah, it says adjust the stop screw, which would be this, which I just lubed up before. Hopefully maybe it'll actually turn. I may have to put a wrench on that. It actually looks like it is a hex also. This is and that was not touching anything. So when the valve was all the way closed, it's not even touching. So this thing definitely was not set up perfectly by the instructions. So some of these things that don't look right, it's possible that it wasn't right. Papa Stu did swear to me that this car, when it ran really good. He said it many times. But you know, there could be little oddball things that maybe you wouldn't notice. Yeah, so that needs to be run in so that it pushes this off a hair. Start engine, adjust the mixture screw, which would be this, until it idles smoothly. Readjust the stop screw 1 to idle engine at approximately 400 RPMs. Wow, that's low. It's very low. Then readjust the mixture screw. I'll play with that once it gets on the car. I think we have it set up enough. I think I have this turned out about 1 1/4 turns. I think we have it set up well enough to get it running if this carburetor is going to do really anything remotely close to working, because some of the stuff just might be a little bit too seized or something, or might have a little bit too much corrosion maybe to work. I don't know. That first little bit of movement, there's quite a bit of graveliness to it. Like, it seems really smooth through most of the range, but that last little bit, I don't know. So we'll have to see what happens once it's actually on the car. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and put the choke back on, and I'm just gonna center this where the writing is pretty much, you know, vertical, and you just want to make sure that you catch this tab inside of that. So you kind of have to start a little bit this way and then bring it back. But of course I'm going to put the gasket and this little baffle plate back on first, and then it's just putting this little cover on and putting it back on the car. That's basically what I gathered from the instructions, as far as the best that I can make out of how to rebuild this carburetor and adjust things. Some of it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Hopefully it'll make more sense later, and if you guys have worked on these carburetors and would like to drop a comment and explaining some of this stuff to me, I would greatly appreciate that. So anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching. I know it's probably a little bit of a long video, but I hope it helps somebody out. So anyway, I'll see you again soon.